Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on, what's today again, the date? 6th, that's right, November 6th. And would you please, I'm going to open the council meeting at 7 o'clock. And we're going to start with a flag salute. And David Welch, please come up.
Hello, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to this nation for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two.
Thank you. Mr. Welch is part of the VFW Santiam Canyon Post 5638. Thank you for leading us in that flag salute, sir. Is there any announcements? Additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I would ask that we add to the end, basically after the general business items that are already scheduled, add the ARPA discussion that we didn't have time to have at the work session.
Sounds good. So you're allowed that as a last before communication from staff?
Correct.
Okay, so be it. So noted. Is there any declarations of ex-party conflict, ex-party contacts, conflict of interest, bias, etc.? No? Okay. Is there any appointments? Looks like we have one appointment to the library board. Jana, you want me to just go with it? Awesome. So it looks like we're going to appoint Lauren Mulligan to the library board again. Looks like application for reappointment. And you guys have in your packet her application, and she's been screened by the board itself, by Jana and I think by Council Ort, correct? Any questions on that? And if not, then I'd like to entertain a motion to do that.
Mr. Mayor,
Council Ort.
I move that we appoint Lauren Mulligan to the library board.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved to second to appoint Lauren Mulligan to the library board. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. And thank you for your service on that, Lauren. We appreciate you stepping forward to fill that role.
Mr. Mayor,
Council Ort.
would this be a good time to remind the audience and those watching at home that we have several other positions
You bet.
available on our commissions and boards?
It would be a good time. Do you know, Council Ort, off the top of your head, how many we have and what they are?
I'm going to defer to our lovely staff.
So we have, I think there's 2 on the Parks Board, which we actually have an application pending to come forward, hopefully at the next meeting. There's 1 position on the Planning Commission, which we did also receive an application for this past
Awesome.
week. So the other big one is the Budget Committee, which has 3 vacancies, and I have not gotten any applications for that one. But we continue to put it out there to the community and invite them to volunteer.
Yes.
I'll have to twist some arms on that one, I guess.
Help us figure out what to do with our money.
Yes.
It's important.
It's not till May, and it's only for, what, 2 weeks at the most?
3
Yeah.
nights if we, 2
Yeah.
nights if you do
There you
it
go.
efficiently.
Yes, it's once a year in May. Minimum, actually, probably closer to maximum 2 nights.
Okay.
It's rare that we meet more than that.
So there is no lifetime commitment. You don't have to sign off on blood, right? We're good. So thank you for that. Thanks, Lauren, again for stepping forward to that position. That gives us an opportunity for public comment. We do have 1 individual signed up to speak, and Mr. Merle Thomas, come on up. Please state your address in the microphone and 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. Address is 494. It's a business address. I don't live in the city of Stayton, but it's,
You can sit down.
oh. Okay. But my business is located on 494 Wilco Street. It's a dispensary, and what I was hoping to bring up to the city council is the limited hours of operation that have been limited here till 7 p.m. since we opened a couple years ago. And I have 7 other stores within the state. We run those stores until 9 p.m. State allows 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. We have no aspirations to open until 10 p.m., but I was hoping, we ran some numbers and it looked like it would increase our business by between 12 and 16%, depending on location of revenue, monthly revenue. As you well know, the city benefits from that revenue. And so I think it would, from what I believe there's 3 dispensaries here in Stayton. I think that would increase your revenue as well, probably on average of about 15% monthly and annually. And so I'd just like to respectfully request that the city council visit that idea of extending hours till at least 9 p.m. I think it would help all. It would benefit the city, it would certainly benefit our businesses, and I think it would benefit the people of Stayton not to have to go elsewhere to spend their money. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That leaves us to a consent agenda from October 16th.
Sorry, and you also have the resolutions.
I'm
so that-
sorry. Yep. Let me do that again. Consent agenda from October 16th, City Council regular session minutes, resolution number 1073 and resolution number 1074.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor McDonald.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And that leaves us with presentations. Julia?
Yeah, so I'd like to invite Mr. Welch back up here to speak, and as he's coming up, I wanted to note that we are participating in Operation Greenlight again this year. Last year we did sort of very late, and I handed out some green light bulbs to council, but we didn't do much more than that. We're doing a bigger effort this week with you'll see all of the city departments. In fact, if you saw the library, it has a green light in the lobby. All of the city departments will have green lights. And with this light, we let veterans know that they're seen, appreciated, and supported for their service. We also hope that this light will spark awareness and conversations about veteran services and community activities. And we encourage everybody to participate by having a green light on their front porch if they so choose. And with that, we're really thankful to have a representative from the VFW here to help us with the flag salute and also share a little bit about what you guys are doing as a community partner.
Thank you very much. Like I said, well, like you guys said, my name is David Welch. I am the quartermaster for the local VFW post here in Stayton, Oregon. We cover the entire Santiam Canyon for membership. So I come here on multiple facts. I am the VFW, but I'm also a coordinator / instructor for a program called Guitars for Vets in Salem. This has put me in a position where I contact and I talk to several different veteran organizations in the state and around the Salem area. Because of that, when I was approached about leading the Pledge of Allegiance and was informed about Operation Greenlight, one, thank you, that's awesome. I remember going to Walmart and buying a green bulb about 10 years ago when I lived in upstate New York. I think that's a great way of awareness. One of the things that I mentioned to Christian was ways in which maybe this year and future years, this can not only just be a green bulb, but maybe this can be awareness that can be put out through social media or through publications or whatever in the area about different programs that exist for veterans. When I moved back here, I grew up in Kaiser, Oregon, but when I moved back here in 2019, I was made aware by my counselor who let me know that apparently Oregon veterans are sort of loners, is what I was told. I found out that is definitely not true. But then I was also informed by the VFW commander for the state and several others that the Oregon state suffers from being the worst state for veteran support in the past. And also by going through other organizations who've also mentioned that we are also close to last when it comes to mental support and we have a new generation of veterans that have come back from war, from a 20-year war, there's got to be things that we can do out there. And one of them that I've found is basically communication. Because I run the organizations that I do, I know about what's out there, but veterans don't. They don't know that there's a vet center that does counseling, that connects them to different programs if they need a new bed, if they need food for their kids, if they need education for and training to get a new job. They don't know these exist because there's not a great amount of communication that's out there to spread this information, and it all exists. We have a VA hospital in Portland that's way up on the hill that no one knows exists. We have a VA medical facility that's on the outside of Salem next to the airport. Most of these programs and stuff are put in places in which veterans don't know they exist. So one of the programs that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the VFW, which was organized after the Spanish-American War. So it's one of the oldest programs that's out there. In fact, if you look at the insignia, it's actually got the Templar's cross on it. So it's a very old program. But from there, they've just this year been in court, Congress 21 times to fight for veterans. These programs exist, and a lot of the younger veterans just don't know how to go about finding and getting there to where they can meet other veterans and where they communicate what their issues are. Along with the vet center over on Portland Road in Salem, there's a program called Vet Care. Vet Care will help with transitions. They will deal with housing. They will deal with, like I said, training classes for employments. They will connect them with employers. Every month, I was part of a Zoom call with a program called VetNet that has like 15 employment programs just for veterans. It has another 9 or so programs just for food and housing for veterans. They exist. They're out there. Veterans just don't know. Unless you're part of it, you don't know. And that's, I think, the disconnect that's been happening lately in Oregon and in our community is people that are part of the system assume that veterans are hearing about this, but they don't know because they're in the system. They're not on the outside of the system. Seeing that there's not enough flyers, there's not enough social media, there's not enough activities and events that are being put on to spread this information. Next year, I'm working with Uptown Music to put together a music festival that will have many of these different programs, have a booth, and we'll also have veteran musicians that will participate. My goal going forward is to try to build some way in which different veteran organizations and public officials and towns can talk more about what's available out there. Instead of, like I said, it's insane to think there's even one homeless veteran on the street now. With how much support programs are out there, it doesn't make sense. It should not exist. So thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I've talked to Christian and I've given some further information and stuff to put out or whatever, and we can hopefully, like I said, put up some green lights, but also spread some knowledge and help some people. Other than that, every first Monday of the month, the VFW meets at the fire department for their meetings. If anybody who's a veteran that would like to join that served in combat, we're right there, along with the American Legion that's also in Stayton. I'd have to check on when their meetings are, but they do exist, and they meet at the funeral home up on the hill. So thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
With that, we will move on to the public hearing for resolution number 1075. And before I do that, I need to read this announcement. Stayton Municipal Code 4.08.030 rate regulation requires a public hearing be held when adjustments to solid waste rates are proposed. And that's it. right?
I didn't put it in front of you, so I don't know.
I will now, okay, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay.
With that, we'll go, Julia, staff report.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was expecting more. So what you have in front of you is Resolution 1075, which is establishing rates for solid waste by Republic Services. Oh, am I not speaking? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Council, just for people in the audience or anybody watching at home, the council has seen this a few times. You had a work session a while ago where you received a fairly detailed review from Republic Services, and then there was also a presentation at the October 2nd council meeting where you discussed it further and provided some direction on an option to move forward with a rate increase. And so what's in front of you is essentially a resolution accepting that option, which is a 18%, I believe, rate increase that would be effective January 1st. We also, within this resolution, propose to tie any future increases so that it doesn't have to come back to council every time if it's simply a CPI issue. There are certain specific considerations that we outline, so it's that there isn't just a blanket approval, but it allows there to be some automatic increases or some fairly automatic increases. Again, they have to be under a certain CPI. They have to provide us notice. Council has the opportunity to consider it if you so choose, but it just would allow you to not have to do this annually when Republic Services is talking about trying to get better at having regular increases so you're not seeing an 18% increase every year or two or every few years. So with that, we recommend approval of the resolution. I know that Cindy is here from Republic Services if there are any questions that you have about the rates or what's being proposed, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, before we do that, I'm going to open a public hearing. And I will ask, did city staff receive any written testimony regarding the proposed rate adjustment?
No, we did not.
Did city staff receive any requests to testify virtually regarding the proposed rate adjustment?
No, we did not.
Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to provide testimony regarding the proposed rate adjustment? I don't hear anything. With that, I'll close the hearing and we'll go to council deliberation. What would council like to do? You're gonna have to ask Julie. I don't know. I thought we... Go ahead, Council Ort.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I don't necessarily disagree with the CPI increase. I think that would help us stay consistent. I feel like previously we may have, and Councilor Patty's not here, but this, I don't know, Councilor McDonald, but I feel like maybe in the past, previously when it was asked to do a CPI increase, we kind of said no because we wanted a better relationship with Republic Services, or really all of our partners, and it felt like the only time that they came is when, you know, they wanted more increases and not like this partnership. So it was kind of a, does anybody know what I'm talking about? I feel like that's something that we did.
So I know, sorry, I know the last resolution indicated that they would come back and ask for requests per CPI, but they didn't. So I think that may be what you're thinking of, is that we want to see you more often, is essentially what I think you're saying, and not only when you're asking for a rate increase.
I believe so. But I believe that the reason that we did that was because we wanted them to come back?
So so there's multiple ways that you could do this. You could strike section 2, basically, yeah, you could strike section 2 if you don't like that proposal. But that essentially means that they will be coming back every year to ask for a rate increase. If you don't strike section 2, and they're only proposing to increase the rates by CPI if it's less than 5% and under all the other conditions that are laid out, you will likely see them annually. We would request that you see them annually for maybe a state of the waste hauler update. So it's not necessarily seeing them only for money. You're seeing them to kind of get a better sense of what's happening
Sure.
in their operations. But we could absolutely,
That's not a
Okay.
big deal for me. I just feel like maybe that was part of a conversation that we'd had, and I wanted, do you recall that? You're shaking your head.
I think I recall it, and it was the way that it ended up the way that Julia was explaining it. I think there was some discussion about saying you have to come every year, but we didn't end up going there. And I think that the intention with the previous representative was that they were going to come every year and do a presentation,
Sure.
but then she left, and
Okay.
here we are.
Okay. It's not a big deal, I guess. I just was learning.
Councilor Ort, I think I do recall that now that you talk about that. And I think Cindy gave a pretty valid explanation of how that kind of fell by the wayside, no pun intended. But yeah, I think she did a good job trying to explain that to council last time. So thanks for reminding us, though. It was a discussion we had.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, follow up?
Councilor Ort?
And I feel like maybe the flip side to that too is that one of the reasons that we have difficult decisions that we're making today is because we didn't do increases over time with a lot of our different funds for, lots of things that are coming up in front of us. So, like I said, I'm not necessarily against it. I just feel like that was something we were talking about. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio?
Yeah, I would echo, I think, that, I think, I'm not sure I'm echoing anything, to be honest, but I think I generally agree that, I think while we hate to have rates go up, just generally, every person hates paying more money, I think it is, I think that the presentation that was presented, especially seeing what other communities are paying, and that it seems like it's very fair across the board, that that a lot of ratepayers are paying all about the same, and this is really just bringing us up to the standards that it seems like the last year or so we haven't necessarily been at that same raising at the same rate. So it does seem like it's going to be a larger increase, but it is going to be it looks fair to me. So to be able to ensure that, and I think that is, I think everything that was shown in terms of from Republic Services in their presentation on the industry standards for profit and all of that kind of stuff, I really enjoy their presentation, and yeah, I'll be supporting it.
Councilor Sims?
I tend to agree also with Councilor Giglio. I mean, it was a good presentation, and the rates look very fair, and I know we have to meet standards to make the business profitable slightly. They have to make a slight profit. So, and we were trending towards making Republic Services lose money for the city. So I think the 18% increase is in order, and I think it's very fair with this CPI under 5% for future increases.
Mr. Mayor? Councilor McDonald?
Yeah, I think it should just be added for the public's sake that we did, this was an option that we considered to actually minimize the impact to our ratepayers and our citizens. So I don't want people to just think that we just accepted their proposal outright. We definitely considered a bunch of options and tried to pick the one that
was felt the least like a hammer to the head. So that's and then repeating what the other councilors mentioned, I do think we need to be fair and allow businesses that work for profit to operate profitably. And I know the costs for a lot of things, including disposal and incineration and those kind of things, have gone up massively. So with all that said, this is the solution we came up with, and I'll vote to approve.
Thank you. Can I get some movement?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ort.
I motion to approve resolution number 1075 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second to approve resolution 1075 as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say, do I have to do the poll on this one? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. That leaves us on to the next item of business, resolution 1076, authorizing a franchise agreement with Comcast. Julia?
Yes, so this is a resolution that will authorize a new franchise agreement with Comcast. They don't currently have a franchise agreement in the city of Stayton, and they are looking to locate within the city of Stayton as well as other cities in the area, and they're hoping to build out and offer that service up. But before they could do that, they need a franchise agreement. This has been prepared through both a draft from Comcast, looking at what other cities in the area have done. We partnered and coordinated with the city of Sublimity and Almsville, who are also looking at these franchise agreements. Spoke with our attorney, actually did the bulk of the drafting, had staff look at it and provide comments, so it's had a lot of back and forth between us, our neighbors, and Comcast. And so what's in front of you is essentially the result of that work. We recommend adoption of the franchise agreement. Tim Goodman from Comcast is here if you have any questions about Comcast itself or their plans moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on resolution 1076? Don't hear any. Council? Want to have a discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor McDonald?
I do have questions for the representative if he's ready to.
Go ahead, sure.
Yes, go ahead. Come on up, Tim.
Sorry, I missed the name.
Tim, sorry, yes. And make sure the green light is on the table.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Tim Goodman, I'm Senior Director of Government Regulatory Affairs with Comcast for the Pacific Northwest region, which we essentially go from Eugene, Springfield, up the I-5 corridor to Canada, out to Spokane, and other places in between. So, and I'm the company's representative. My office is in Tigard. And my team handles all of the franchise agreements and relations with all of the cities and counties where we serve in Oregon and up to Olympia, Washington.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Go ahead, Councilman.
My question's going to be a bit technical because I work in IT, and that's where my brain goes first. We have an existing service provider that uses this similar technology, this cable technology that Comcast uses. My question is about infrastructure, essentially, and what additional infrastructure will need to be added for your service to be provided, if any, and who's responsible for that, and what do the approvals look like for whatever work is going to be needed?
Okay, so we're going with what we call our EPON network, which is fiber, which gives you unlimited possibilities as far as, well, one, the cable, the video product is going to be better. Your broadband speeds are going to be there's more capable as far as symmetrical and so on. So, so the only infrastructure you're going to see basically is our fiber, if it's in the air, or you won't see it obviously if it's underground. So, and typically, as in the franchise agreement, wherever the other telecom providers are using poles, and we will have pole attachment agreements with the pole owners. If it's underground, then we go underground.
Okay, I know we already have, the local SCTC here has fiber in the ground. So will you have an agreement with them to use their existing infrastructure, or are we going to be digging up ditches and adding new wires and?
It would all be boring
Okay.
for underground, yeah.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so we would use our own, it would be our own fiber, our own facilities, we go through the locates and everything, and then everything we do would be permitted by the city.
Okay.
So, and they typically do those by what we call nodes, whereas kind of a cluster, if you will, you're not gonna see some big, building or anything like that. It's just where we break out into a neighborhood and things like that. So, yeah, so anything where everything is underground, there's not going to be any trenching. It's all boring.
Gotcha. And then the only other concern I would have would be that boring through any potential private property. I've heard stories in the past, not from your company particularly, but like people having stuff run through their private property without their permission. And so that was my only concern.
Yeah, the franchise provides us access to the right-of-way only, and very rarely do we ever go on anybody's property unless they want us to, for whatever reason it may be. There are some areas. We did a recent build in another city we completed. Actually, it was Woodburn, and there was an issue about there was a public easement, a utility easement on the back property lines. And versus going in and disturbing that, we chose to use the right of way because it was going to create less intrusion on the residents or businesses wherever we were at. So, and then if there's something where through the boring, we have to actually have an entrance into the ground and so on, then we will repair everything back to where it was. If there's any construction issues. Not issues, but, from just breaking up open the ground and everything.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
I just had one question for Julia and then possibly for Tim. Do you remember my question that I asked you? Yeah. My question was very simple. Is it something we're even allowed to say no to, or is it something that we just need to tweak if there was questions that we had to contract?
So it's funny, simple question, simple. This was the response from the attorney. So essentially, no. I mean, basically, we can't. The Cable Act provides that a local franchising authority may not unreasonably refuse to award a competitive franchise application. Legal stuff. Basically, in other words, doing any of the following may be construed as an unreasonable refusal: failing to issue a decision on a competitive franchise application within a reasonable amount of time, failing to grant a franchise because of unreasonable build-out mandates, demanding additional costs, fees, or other compensation above and beyond the 5% that's allowed. And there's some other stuff in here. So yeah, we don't really have a choice. We can outline what's required and allowed, but even that has to be reasonable. And we have been going back and forth for several months now to kind of make sure that we've got it right. I mean, certainly you can make modifications and tweak, but if that's the case, we'd want to make sure that you keep it reasonable and we do it quickly so that it's not being construed as drawing it out and creating too much time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor.
Okay, Julia, I just thought of this question. So, so we're talking about franchise fees, and it made me think of a conversation that we had previously, actually, about Republic Services and then where those franchise fees go. And I had brought up that maybe we should consider putting those towards our streets. And then we're talking about putting in cables and whatnot. So when we're tearing up streets, does that affect the utility or their cable lines and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, it's outlined in the franchise agreement that we, under what circumstances they have to relocate, under what we have to give them so much notice. We can allow certain things, but it has to be we have to not allow structures over their utilities. So it's kind of all laid out and envisioned as best it can be within the franchise agreement.
Okay.
One more question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
What, assuming this is approved, what's the typical timeline once this is approved for turn on service for our citizens?
So I'm trying to give an example. So Woodburn, which is a bit larger, the time from the approval of the franchise agreement till we were done with the build out. So the passings there, meaning number of residents and businesses, was about 10,500. That took about 19 months from approval to finish. And so that once if y'all approve this tonight, we get signatures, within a couple of weeks, then we would start going after our permits and that type of thing. It would be, it would be probably 18 months is probably a good guess.
Okay.
Mount Angel, we're just finishing up right now. I got that franchise a year ago, August, and we'll be done by the end of the year.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? I have a question for Lance in regards to utilities in general. Lance, do we have any standard when the streets are torn up for utilities as far as how they replace it? It seems like a lot of time we get a brand new street, just lay it out, and guess what?
Yeah, I'm
On the
not really
back end.
concerned with brand new streets so much as existing streets and existing infrastructure. And if it's underground, those are issues that we'll have to work with the franchise utility. We have a lot of, for example, SCTC. They have a lot of underground in our city, and we're running into nothing but problems with it because there was no design standards, and they're all over the street, and we're trying to put sewer lines in or water lines, and they're in our way. And for them to move those franchises, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. And so we're in a predicament. So we'll have to work with Comcast to make sure that they put them in where we need them and where we want them, and they're not in the future right-of-way or the future areas where our water or sewer lines will be built. And that's an issue that we'll have to work with Public Works to make sure that it's placed correctly. Now, if it's a road where they're boring, most of the time they'll do a bore pit on outside of the right-of-way and do their work. So I don't really know when the gentleman here talks about boring. I guess I haven't seen their plan. I'm a little bit confused with doing our entire city, what that means. Does that mean we're going to be going in each one of our right-of-ways and putting new infrastructure? Or are you taking over old infrastructure? I guess I'm not aware of.
It would all be new.
And so we'd have to have some conversations with that. I didn't realize that.
Right.
This is a new plan for me. So I haven't seen their plan. And before they start doing any work in the right-of-way, they're going to have to get a permit from Public Works. That's what I'll tell you. And we're not going to allow something to happen just without making sure it doesn't affect our current infrastructure.
I appreciate it. I'm thinking, so I appreciate that perspective, but also when it comes to when they're concluding their work, and is there a standard for street repair or street?
Yeah.
Because we have patchwork all over the place.
Exactly. All you have to
Yeah.
do is drive into West Town, and you can see what SCTC did to our West Town. There are trenches that are deformed and sinking throughout the subdivision because they hired somebody to do the job, and they didn't do a very good job, and the city didn't follow it very closely. So now, instead of just doing slurry seals for maintenance, we have to mill and grind because they're so bad.
Right.
And the reason they're so bad are because of the franchise trenches that were performed. So we have to make sure that they're done right, and we have standards for that.
Okay.
I don't think we've had any issues in the last 8 or 9 years because we hold their feet to the fire and make sure they're done correctly.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, I'll point out that that's what the franchise agreement and what's outlined in the franchise agreement, and them requiring to get a permit is intended to make sure doesn't happen.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing any work, without any permit, and so everything will be ran through your Public Works Department, whoever's in charge of that, and also, this is kind of a business as usual for us, so we understand, concerns about, we're going to be tearing streets up and things like that. Going back, there was a question earlier about locates and relocates and so on, and we call them in the business called a forced relocate. If you decide for some reason you're going to underground in an area, that's something we do on a daily basis, in certain cities and so on, and so we comply with that. The franchise protects you in that regards.
Okay.
And so we want to be a partner with you. We want to do things the right way, and so we can provide the best services that we can to the city.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, Tim, is there, and this might be very too early to know, but in communities like this where you are building out franchises, are there typically offices at all that are located in those communities, or is that more just depending on the size of the community and just too early to tell?
Depending on the size, we have the closest office right now is in by the Lancaster Mall in Salem, and then we have they're not in every city. Like down in Eugene, Springfield, there's one in Eugene, there's one in Springfield. Then coming up, we have the one in Salem. The next one would be in Tigard. So it just depends, and on the amount of people and so on. One of the things we do like to provide what we call now our retail stores, because when we have like 5 different products, so we have the video product, we have the broadband product, we have landline, we have home security, and then we have Xfinity Mobile, so we all have our own cell service as well. And so we like to have the retail stores when people can go in and pick out their phones and things like that. But the closest one is at the Lancaster Mall in Salem.
Anybody else? Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate
You
it.
bet.
What would council like to do?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor McDonald.
I'd like to go ahead and move that we approve resolution 1076 as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve resolution 1076 as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Giglio.
is it all right if I just abstain on that one? Is that allowed? Or like to just vote present? If it still passes?
I don't see why, but okay. So your vote is what?
Just present? Is there a way to just vote present?
Abstaining.
Abstaining?
Okay. Motion carries 3-0 with 1 abstention. That leaves us to our fiscal year 23-24 first quarter finance report. James?
Good evening. I'd like to share with you the quarter 1 financial report. So this is for July, August, and September. And just to point out that I believe the last time you had a quarter report was the second quarter of the previous year. And you got it in April, which is a bit later than the second quarter ends, which was in December. So I'm trying to provide these a little sooner than that. That will sacrifice a little bit of accuracy just to say that there's still some cleanup work to be done, but the cleanup at this point is very minor. But happy to report the quarterly report. And you should have in your packets a chart full of numbers and a memo. I'm not going to have that on the slides, but there'll be similar information. So assuming that the formatting of the document is not too confusing, it just goes from revenues and expenditures. It has last year's first quarter, this year's first quarter, and then the full budget. And so the colorful column will have the traditional green is good, red is bad, yellow is right on target. But we are 25% through the quarter, and the numbers are there. I'll try to anticipate your questions. The revenue is under-collected at this point at just 19%, but that is expected at this point because of timing issues on the property tax and other tax revenues, as well as some grants we're expecting to receive later in the year. The expenditures, you'll note, are also underspent, so that's even better at just 18%. You can see at the bottom. And I'll try to anticipate some of those questions as well. The community center is overspent at 34%, and that is simply because we've paid for some annual things in the first quarter, being both insurance and fire alarm services. And the facilities fund as well is overspent at 37%, and this is because some of the master plan expenses, which were budgeted from last year, carried over into this year. We don't expect that to cause an annual overspending in there. Most of the other expenses are under budgeted, and that's typically good, but I wanted to point out a couple things like the street fund and the stormwater fund are well underspent. Let's see. The street, we're anticipating later in the year spending for overlays and slurry seals that haven't started yet, as well as buying a street sweeper. So that's pretty well on target. Stormwater is underspent because we haven't started the master plan that's budgeted there, or a capital project at Ida Street from 1st to 3rd. So that's a big project later in the year. This slide just kind of represents a summary of the finances in terms of revenues, expenses, and the budget. So like I said, the revenues are under-collected, as well as the expenses. So the expenses are higher than revenues. That's kind of scary, but when you do compare it to the budget, you can see that we're well under budget. So again, being the first quarter, it's kind of a small sample size in terms of the data. So things will smooth out over the year, but I don't see any red flags or concerns really in the spending or the revenue side. And then this is just an expenditure by category, showing the personal services at 41% of our spending, materials and services at 27%, capital outlay at 21%, and then debt service. As we complete the year, you'll see capital outlay probably growing as we do more of our projects. The personal services section will shrink a bit. Materials and services is pretty close to the budgeted amount, and the debt service will grow, and that's again because of timing issues and when the debt's due. And then this chart shows our cash balances. So budget's one thing, cash is another. This breaks down the cash by each fund, and you may have picked up on the revenue side that our revenue is collected at 84% of budget for interest income, and that's because of this note on the right showing that our interest earnings in the LGIP account is at 5% right now, which is much higher than we anticipated when the budget was built. That's indicative of the interest rates climbing, and so are our earnings. And then I wanted to point out our debt. As we look at cash, we kind of want to look at the debt as a balancing factor. This is just all of the loans that we have, and the outstanding balance in the third column. The interest rates are in that second column, Most of these loans are very low interest. That second one that's at 3%, that is a variable rate, and the ceiling on it is 4%. I do anticipate the rate to increase on that one at some point. And then I did want to just point out some projects that I've been working on in our office and things to come in the future. Financing infrastructure projects, that's kind of one of our top priorities right now, looking into the future, the next 5 years or so of projects. We had a one-stop meeting and got some good information there, especially from the DEQ, an offer of grants combined with loans that might be something that we're pursuing. So we're talking with the COG, is it? Yes, COG, one of the representatives there to help us possibly put an application forward for a grant with DEQ that's due December 8th. And we're not quite sure if we need council approval for that, but that's something we need to figure out as we apply for a grant. Obviously, before we apply for a loan or sign for a loan, we would have your approval. But there's a grant and loan mixed into this DEQ offer that we're really looking into. Some other things I've been working on is some policies. As much as I don't like to just add policies for policy's sake, I do think that there's some things lacking, including a fund reserve policy. I'd really like to identify what we would like to have as cash reserves in each fund, what's an appropriate level for a contingency and a reserve, and if we have more than we need, what can we do with that money? Maybe pay down some of these loans or reinvestment in projects or something else. So I am looking at some finance policy updates as well as an IT policy that we don't have right now. So looking into that. I have a sample one that I'm looking at. And then I'm finishing up on a surplus property policy right now. That's not land and buildings, not real property, but personal property, and just how to clean up some existing things that we have. And then, of course, the 5-year budget and projections and CIP, that's something that needs to be done soon. Risk identification and mitigation is also something I've been learning more about at different organizations, and I'm hoping to do more of that. And then balance sheet reconciliations, something that hasn't been done recently, and it really helps with our audits. So we're trying to get that caught up. So that's all I have to share with you. I'm welcome to any feedback or any questions you might have, things that you'd rather see presented, or anything else. Please let me know.
And James, thanks for putting this together. It's one of the first times I've seen something like this in my history, so I appreciate you doing that. At what point what quarter would you put more scrutiny on it? Right now it sounds like you're saying, you're giving us reasons why we shouldn't be too alarmed, but at what point, what quarter would you start putting more?
Definitely by the next quarter.
Okay.
If things aren't smoothing out, or there's still issues that you have questions about, definitely want to look at that. Yeah, but with just 3 months of data, it's hard to really find problems unless something really stands out, and I'm just not seeing it right now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Councilor McDonald.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a specific project in mind for that DEQ grant, or is it?
Yes, that's for our sewer projects that have been identified. Some of them we were planning to fund with future rate increases, but again, planned over 5 years. So these projects are on a timeline right now. But with this possible funding, including grants, we could do all the projects really quickly at current construction rates and have a locked-in, low-interest loan long-term.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giulio.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what the mayor said earlier. I really appreciate seeing this. I think this is really good. I love having these numbers so quickly after the quarter is done. I think it's really good to keep updating. I also really appreciate the work on the policies and the reserves. the reserve policy. I think that's going to be really helpful and something that I was really wanting last time around in the budget, and I think it's going to be really nice to have that, and just that good basis of like, okay, what is best policies and what are really best practices, and really just have a solid state for that. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, yeah, I would just also echo, like, I am very interested in those. I've heard a little bit about the DEQ, loans, and everything you just said. I mean, I think that is a really good reason to say, no, let's lock in some of these rates now while we can, because I don't anticipate, markets or interest rates. I mean, not that it matters what I think, but it's hard to project inflation going down or going the other way. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you, and yeah, I like what I'm seeing.
Anybody else? Okay, James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And James is going to stay there
Okay.
for the next.
Go ahead. So that leads us to our ARPA discussion.
Yes, and I'm going to just hand out, this is a handout that I had for you at the last work session that we discussed ARPA. Pass that down, just to remind you, because it's been a little while. It was August 4th that we had that conversation. And yeah, just as a reminder, we have a little under $1,921,221.64 to be exact, to use in ARPA funds. They have to be obligated by the end of next year, and they have to be expended by the end of the following year. So that shapes the types of projects that we can put forward. And then we also presented a list of project ideas that had been prepared by the city staff, kind of thinking about the projects that were available or that were ready and that we thought would be good uses of the funds. After looking at all of those, the staff recommendation was to put that all towards the Ida Street sewer project. That's the main part, the sewer that James was referring to. It's a multi-phase project that is pretty important both for existing sewer, but also for any future development needs. And so that's the recommendation. We did discuss at the last work session some other options and kind of looking at it different ways. And at the time, if you recall, council wanted to think about it, wait on it. We had a potential community partner that was going to be coming to the next meeting, and we thought there might be some opportunities to partner on Mill Creek a little bit more, and so that's why you didn't provide direction at that time, and we waited, and then just things happened, and we had other work session items. So this is why we're going to bring it back to you today. So we're really looking for feedback from council on how you would like to see that money directed, so that James can bring forward, hopefully at the next meeting or shortly thereafter, a budget adjustment, I believe is the proper term, to allocate that money so that we can start making plans to spend it. And then James is here to answer questions, and Lance is here too if you have any questions about the projects that we've listed.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Sims.
So with the DEQ grant, or low interest loans, would that still be the recommendation for everything going towards the Ida Street project, sewer project?
I would still recommend, yes, that all the ARPA funds go to the sewer project. It's still a large project, and any time you can save, a loan.
And just to clarify, the amount of funding that we laid out for DEQ was about $4.5 million. That assumed that we were still having a local share on top of that we were funding some of that on top of that. And the $4.5 million essentially could be funded through low interest loans and then a forgivable portion of up to 50% or $2 million. So there's still going to be money even on top of
That's right. That's
Yeah.
on top of the DEQ. Because I would definitely, the Ida Street sewer is very important, especially for the growth of the city itself and to improve the existing lines. But I would definitely like to see some money along with the SDC funds going towards development of Mill Creek Park. because, I mean, the city is going to grow, and we're going to have to grow with it, and the parks are going to have to grow, and, I mean, it's an empty field right now. I mean, I'd love to see phase 1 of that Mill Creek Park get started.
And I will note that, so as James presented, we actually have in the SDC fund for parks just a little over $1 million. We're also working we're also working on getting an application prepared for an ORPD grant, Oregon Parks and Recreation grant, to help with Mill Creek Park. So we did that before. We weren't successful. We're going to go again. So there are also other opportunities if we didn't allocate ARPA funds towards Mill Creek Park, if we had the SDC and we got other grants. Lance, do you know how much we're going for that grant? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's my fault. The OPRD grant that Julia refers to, the one we applied for before, we applied for a $1.4 million grant, of which we were going to have to come up with 25%. Currently, that was due to COVID. The state apparently has more money to spend, so we don't even have a match. So we'd be going for 1.4 million or more, depending on what that first phase is, but we wouldn't have a match. It's all state funded. So that's what we're looking at doing. I guess they have more money allocated towards the OPRD large grants this year. And so I think we were actually talked to by the state, or was it the LOC or the COG? The COG recommended that we go for the OPRD because of the added money that they have and the reduced sharing.
Yeah, on that grant, we had talked with the COG, Council of Governments, on helping us with a different grant for Mill Creek Park, and they looked into it. They actually did some outreach, and they after the discussion and the outreach, they recommended that they thought we were a better fit for the ORPD grant, and so they're helping us prepare that grant, and it's due
April 1st.
April 1st.
Or April 6th, something like that, yeah. So we'll be working over it, working with them, them writing the grant application, preparing that over the next few months, and then, but first off, we have to update the master plan of Mill Creek Park, because we need to show the ASR down there, because that has changed. And then the teen center, wherever we're going to do with that, it needs to be shown on there. It wasn't shown before. We weren't planning on keeping it down there, so we've got to update that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, so the stormwater improvements in locations of street improvements. So these are for the streets that are planning on being fixed in the coming year, the coming 2 years. Like, where's the is that correct? Is that these are before those streets, like the Douglas?
Increase the size of that. My glasses with me.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since we put this together, and I didn't really look at it again in detail. The idea was that it would allow us to not do street improvements solely because there were stormwater improvements that needed to be done too. So the idea is that we would have stormwater funds available that would do some stormwater improvements, and allow us to tie that together with the street improvements.
So there was some conversations before about, well, we can't really do all our street improvements because some of them are street reconstructions, right? And the street reconstructions generally typically require storm drainage improvements too, because most of our street reconstructions, they don't have curbs or anything like that. And once you put a curb in the ground, you need to route stormwater somewhere. And so our stormwater fund is not very strong. It's one of the weakest ones. And so this would allocate some money towards improvements if we decided we wanted to do a reconstructed street versus just milling and overlaying. And I think that's what this speaks to.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's what I was thinking is when I was seeing this year was how weak that fund was, how stormwater fund was when we went through the budget.
It's the newest, though, also.
Yeah,
you know.
it is the newest, yeah. Thank you.
I remember that discussion as well. Hey, the DEQ loans, are those backed by the Clean Water revolving fund? That's
Yeah.
that's what we talked about?
That's
Yes.
what they were
Yeah,
talking about.
okay.
That's at the one-stop.
Yeah, I think that's a benefit we should really try to use.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Ort.
And that goes towards the sewer, the DEQ.
Yes.
Yes.
So James, you were saying it's a grant and a loan?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you explain that one more time?
Yeah, DEQ is offering up to $2 million of a grant for a project. And at the meeting, they recommended that we could break it into 2 projects since we needed quite a bit of money. I think we were proposing around 5.6 million. But the entire project would probably be re-looked at when we do this application of what projects we would include in it, because we were looking way ahead at sewer projects well into the future, and if we get financing now, we would probably consider adding projects to that. So all that to say, we could break it into 2 projects and get at least 2 million for the first one. I think it's a percentage of the total.
Yeah, it's 50%, so up to $2 million or 50%, whichever is less, and so we would.
So we could possibly get around 3 million in grants for the entire project, and the rest would be financed at a 30-year loan fixed 2.01%.
Mr. Mayor, follow up?
Go ahead.
But that is specific to the sewer fund, and we can take some of the ARPA money and put it into our stormwater fund. That's what you're saying we can do? Stormwater fund?
Those options for each here. Yeah, our initial recommendation was to put it all toward the sewer project as well, the portion that we would have to pay for.
So, and the other consideration, I mean, is, yes, we absolutely could. Remember, it has to be spent before the end of December 2026. It has to be obligated by the end of December 2024. If it's not, we have to give the money back.
Sure.
So we want to make sure it's a project that we absolutely can obligate and spend within that time frame.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Lance, if we did decide to put 300,000 towards stormwater improvements, do we have, like on your chart, do we have streets that we
My
can?
magic chart?
Your
Yeah,
magic
I
chart.
do.
I know it's
No, I do.
it's very scientifically based. I know.
We're actually looking at that right now.
Okay.
We're looking at different roads that require different improvements, so we can kind of start breaking those out. But yeah, we could fix that very easily.
Okay.
I'd love to do an Old Town Road and upgrade it with curbs and sidewalks, and I would really like to see that happen. And so that's a very good possibility if we were to do that.
So I just want to confirm that if we did go in that direction, you feel like we could spend that money potentially before the deadline.
The design is the key to that. We'd need to know fairly quick if that's the route we wanted to go, because it's probably going to take 6 to 9 months to design a reconstruction like that. It's much different than a mill and overlay. There's some significant design work that gets involved. So 69 months for design, 6 to 8 months for construction. So you're talking, a year and a half or more before it's complete.
Okay.
So it's really a timeline issue.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Sims.
Basically the same question for the parks. If we push some money towards the parks, could we obligate it in time? Because it sounds like you got to do some updates to the master plan also.
Well, I'm meeting with them, or we're meeting with them at some point this week, I believe. I think the updates could probably be done relatively quickly, a month. I mean, we're gonna have the master plan completed. I think that Julia wants to do some community engagement with that, so whatever that looks like. We'll have the master plan and the application ready to go before April. We'll probably be done with that application sometime in February for the submittal. And so if that is the case, you guys want to put money towards that, we would just have to do, these are just concept drawings, okay? So if we were to put money towards it to actual construction, we'd have to get someone on board to design the park improvements for construction. And so that might take 6 to 8 months, but still, we're talking 2026, if I'm correct. By the time we have to spend it, we just have it allocated by December of 2024. Yeah.
So Julie, are you looking for direction tonight, or?
We are, but I just want to, actually, we just got something today from LOC that's talking about the obligation of ARPA funds. And it says, one of the questions is, what is an obligation? As stated in the final rule, obligation means an order placed for property and services and entering into contracts, subawards, and similar transactions that require payment. So it's more than just allocating the money, we actually have to obligate the money. Sorry, I just printed this out today because it just came through today. So that's more clarification, and I'll share this with you guys. I'm not sure if you saw this or not. Yes, I think we are looking for direction, because the longer it takes to get direction, the longer it takes us to move forward to obligating. James, I'll let you speak to how much time they have to make a decision. I know you wanted to kind of have a budget adjustment sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it just helps with all the planning, when we're applying for loans and grants, what we've got to deal with. But it sounds like either of the 3 projects, we can spend the money in that time.
Mr. Mayor? Oh, sorry.
Councilor Giglio.
So just to clarify, you were saying that there, sorry, Lance, you were saying that there might be a possibility to spend some of that stormwater money on like an old town road might be a possibility for reconstruction. Are you needing any, so I see that there's some of that stormwater can go towards that. Would you need some of like the sidewalk improvements as well to make that a possibility?
It would be a total package. That's why we'd really need to look at it, because more than likely we probably had some water line upgrades, sidewalk upgrades, stormwater upgrades, perhaps even sewer upgrades. So these are projects that you want to look, that we have to look and decide we're going to do it. So I have a year and a half to do it, because it's going to take design and then allocating those funds through our budget process. But yeah, you could use the storm money here. We could find a road and start putting money towards that for streets, from streets and sewer and so forth. I don't know about sewer so much, because we've pretty much got a 5 to 10 year project for this already.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to find enough money to start putting more sewer in.
Yeah.
This is kind of why, for simplicity, I recommend it all go to sewer, because we know we can spend it all and it doesn't have a ripple effect. When you start a project just dedicated toward the storm project, that involves streets. And parks, kind of the same. Once you start a big phase development, you got to see it through. So we could allocate a portion of this money toward a park, and then we would spend that money first, and then we could go to our SDC park funds, which we have $1 million in the bank just waiting to be spent. So it just kind of creates a ripple effect. You have to have funds in the right place in the right time, and plans to do these other things when there's a ripple effect.
Yeah, the SDC funds of $1 million towards the park, and if you go for the OPRD grant, we asked for $1.5 million. Maybe we get $1 million from them, and then you've got SDC funds you can also throw at it. So you got a pretty substantial project down there.
Yeah, it seems like it was over $5 million, wasn't it, for
the
Mill
whole
Creek?
project.
Yeah, for the whole, all 4
That's
phases.
5 or 6 phases of it, right? So, but for the first phase, I think we had the restroom, we had play facilities, we had 3 or 4 pavilions, we had sidewalks going around the area. So It was pretty substantial project. That's probably around more like a $2 million, well, $1.8 million project now. But still, I guess that's my point is, if you get $1 million grant, you have $1 million of SDC funds, you can take some to build it. It would be a significant start for sure. I do, one last thing regarding the sewer. I think it's important that you realize that the sewer lines that we're building now are pretty much for existing capacity that we have. Our existing they're not big. Our existing sewer that goes down Ida Street is more than the capacity of the pipe is. That's why we're having to upsize it. So this first couple of phases is just to treat existing sewers. The phases that go up First Avenue and then down Marion Street, that's for future development. So that's a separate project. That's project 2.4. I can't recall, is that part of the one-stop grant? So we're looking at doing that, and that will actually open up development to us to the east and up by Pine Street, the big up by the water reservoir. Once that's complete, that will be opened up for development, and all that development will contribute to our SDC fees, so we can start looking at more and more projects to expand on parks, streets, that kind of thing. So economic development and development actually contribute to the growth and the improvements of our infrastructure as well through SDCs. And that's why we should be looking at the sewer, getting that done as soon as we can so we can open up development. Just, I wanted to throw that out so you're aware of that.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor Ward.
But then won't we still always run into the problem that our stormwater is our, you said, our youngest and our most underfunded fund, so that we're still going to go back to that, and we're never going to circle back to these streets that need these improvements, but we can't get to them because we're just going to be in the same cycle, I feel like.
What I will say to that is that our stormwater master plan is over 20 years old. We are looking at doing that right now. SDC fees can be used for stormwater master plan projects, and we're going to have a lot of them, and that's simple as an 18-inch line going down Hollister that needs to be built to alleviate flooding. We're going to have a lot of those in town, and SDC funds can be used for those.
But, sorry.
No, go ahead.
They can only go to improving, like you said, upgrading those lines or new development, right? So if a street doesn't meet those criteria, can't SDC charges only go towards new development?
Well, we're talking storm, so new
Yeah.
storm SDCs, yeah. If we want to put a 18-inch pipe down a road, which our master plan would call for, or let's say, for example, we can use SDC funds for that.
So what about roads that don't need upgrades?
Roads would be street SDC that don't need upgrades, as in storm upgrades?
Yeah. Then we can't use that money.
Well, we wouldn't need. If we
Well, I
need
think what she's saying is that if we don't need a line for a stormwater line, but the street improvement needs stormwater, because we'd have to do some stormwater component with any street improvement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that might be what you're referring to, is that's not going to be paid for by SDCs. So,
More than
Yeah.
likely not.
yeah.
Right, but we also, in the latest utility rate study, we had a recommendation that we increase the storm rates by 40% 2 consecutive years. So we've done one of those increases already. So next year we do have another planned 40% increase for the storm rates, and that's what's shoring up that fund.
And also, I want to point out with that utility rate study, we didn't have a master plan that we could really draw on there for our storm capital improvement projects. And the utility rate study was based on our capital improvement plans. We didn't really have a huge one for storm. So our utility rate study, while James said it was a 40% increase, we went from $4 to $6. It's not very big. It's not going to build the stormwater fund up real quick, even if we do it again. So once we have the stormwater master plan done, we'll know what our capital projects need to be, and then we'll have to address that here in the future.
Okay, council?
I didn't know you were aware of that.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor.
I appreciate your guys' input. The information is very helpful. What? Okay, maybe it's one more question. So let's say that we did want you to put some money towards stormwater improvements, and in that process we figured out, you know what, it's not going to work with money constraints of all the other things that we have to do on the street. What is our timeline for flipping that money back into the Ida Street sewer project?
Sounds like a James question.
Because where I'm going with this is I want this money to go towards the stormwater. I'd like us to kind of push for that. That's where
So
my mind is going.
Here's a thought. I mean, we'll continue to get recommendations from you guys, but I think I'm getting a sense that you're not going to be quite ready to give us a firm recommendation tonight. And maybe what we do,
I mean, I am.
Well, but maybe what we do is ask, like, give some direction that says, Lance, go back and sharpen your pencil and tell me whether or not you can definitively spend X amount of money in stormwater, funds by this date, and obligate it, meaning it's got to be designed and ready to bid by the end of 2024. Because that's essentially what has to be done. It has to be obligated based on this document I got today. An order placed for property and services and entering into contracts, subawards, and similar transactions that require a payment. So the question to Lance is, of the things you want to do, does he have any projects that he thinks could be ready to go and bid by the end of next year? And the answer very well may be yes, but I want to make sure that he knows that.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that when we put that on the ARPA list, we were really talking about local roads and milling and overlaying projects. Just about every project we mill and overlay, there's very little to zero stormwater infrastructure in the roads. For example, we're doing Ida Street 1st to 4th next year, okay? We're going to be spending a lot of money just moving catch basins to the curb, and then maybe building a 12-inch line across the street so it picks up the other catch basin. Look at 3rd Avenue where we all sit. That whole intersection needs to be upgraded with stormwater. It's not cheap. And then we've got 3 other blocks that we have to do that. That's really what that money was dedicated for, not necessarily the reconstruction of a street and putting brand new infrastructure in a reconstructed street. We could do that, but that will take longer. I think what we showed here was just what I'm talking about. It's more along the lines of the milling and the overlaying and the upgrading improvements in the street that we normally don't have the money to do. This would help us do. I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that is very helpful. It's not what I was wanting you to do with the money, so.
sorry, I just want to be honest to where
I want you to use the money on a street that you normally wouldn't do. That's what I want. It doesn't have to be like an F. I don't recall, I apologize, the grading system. It doesn't have to be like a worse street, but I want it to be, my envision and my intention is to be able to service a street that we wouldn't get to on a normal basis. That's what I want to see.
Fixing, I'll just point this out, and I understand you completely on this. We've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Fixing the stormwater in the downtown area, just what I've been talking about, the 3rd Avenue improvements, that is so badly needed. I mean, I've seen so many people fall there because of water backing up in the road in our main street in our downtown. We have those kind of issues all over downtown, and we don't have the money to fix them. This kind of money will help us fix them with small local projects, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I wasn't looking at a street reconstruction project when we put that number in. I just want that to be known.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, just to kind of think about this. I mean, the reason why I think it would be important to consider it, even with just saying, okay, we're going to do this on the planned projects, the ones that we have in the pipeline and not necessarily a full construction, is that it's still going to be used instead of money that would be going into these stormwater funds. And so that fund should still be, it's still going to help that overall health of that fund, which is going to allow for some of these other projects down the road. And while I definitely see the value, I can, I understand kind of the financial value of saying, let's just put everything in to the Ida Street, because I know we have a lot riding on that. We really want to push that, and I agree with that. But I do want to see some of these street projects, just make sure they're able to get wrapped up and strengthen some of these funds while we're at it, just because I don't want to get behind on those and really be able to be in a position to, once these once the Ida Street is done, to be able to really to pour more money into the streets. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I would probably say I still support allocating some money towards stormwater, knowing that I think it's still going to help shore up that fund for current and future projects.
Councilor McDonald.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and concur with Councilor Zelio, and I think the spirit of what Councilor Ort was saying is the health of the fund, getting it on balance with the other funds, so that when those projects come up, we don't have one fund that's holding up the show, basically. And so, yeah, I'd definitely be in support of allocating, doesn't have to be exactly this money, but some money, and then dumping the rest into the sewers. I have the same exact feeling as the other councilors on that.
Okay. So, Julia, does that give you an idea? And I think to your point about going back to see if Lance can actually do this before time is a great idea. Would you concur on that? Councilor Sims, you good on that?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you good on what Councilor Giglio, Councilor Ort, and Councilor McDonald's desire is?
I do agree with the stormwater fund. I would like to see a little bit going towards the parks, but I concur with the stormwater and put money into that.
So I want to make sure I understand this. If we were to designate that 300,000, that would still have to be obligated and contractually set up before 2026, correct?
It'd have to be obligated before the end of next year
24.
and spent
before 26.
Yeah.
So I would think it's important that Lance sees that that's, and
Right.
so if we don't do that, then we have to give it back.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that that's something we can physically do, and if it is, then we can have that further discussion.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is that we will ask Lance to look at stormwater projects, Mill Creek project, maybe within the range of what we put in the table, but with some flexibility, and then at the next meeting, essentially come back with here's the allocations, and maybe we can still have a budget adjustment by that point if it's really clear, or you guys can make modifications if you want, but essentially something that's allocating some projects to stormwater or some funds to stormwater, potentially allocating some projects to Mill Creek Park, and the remainder to Ida Street Sewer.
Councilors good with that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm open to seeing some of that. I mean, on a personal level, where my opinion is I have a little bit more faith that SDCs and some of these grants that we're closer on some of the to phase one for Mill Creek Park, to where I wouldn't necessarily invest in the park fund with that money. I think I would still probably put sewer over that, even though I definitely understand the value of it. I think some of our the funding, it seems like we're getting close with some, and I also know that development SDCs, I just know how they're used and how much came in just this last year in SDCs for parks. So if we can get even one development or two developments in, I think that's going to really help pay for Mill Creek down the road. So I would say on a personal level, I would still probably prioritize the sewer over the park, which sounds like terrible when it comes out of your mouth, but that's how it works.
Yep. So noted. And again, we're just doing exploratory to start with to see if it's even feasible. And then we can have the further policy discussion after that.
Okay.
Good?
Lance, sharpen your pencil.
All right. Thank you. That goes to communication from city staff. Julia?
Okay, well, the top thing I was going to talk about is the one-stop meeting and the DEQ thing, so I think we've talked about that quite a bit, so that's good. I also wanted to make an announcement that Republic Services is hosting an e-waste event in the parking lot out in front of the community center on Thursday, November 9th, from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., where people can bring in their electronic things, computer stuff.
Question about that real quick, Julia.
Yes.
And this is probably for the rep. Does that include commercial e-waste? Just on a personal level, is it only for household e-waste?
It's designed for household, but I mean, we're not going to turn anybody away.
Okay.
Yeah.
My day job, place of business has a large amount of e-waste that we could get rid of. Pallets and pallets worth.
You can say no, Cindy. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it would be about a 30-yard drop-off. So, I mean, we're there till, listen, you can call me.
Okay.
If we have room for it, we bring it.
Will do.
So, I'll give you my card and you can call me. I just don't want to, I don't want to use up all the room for that and then people don't have room for
Understood. We'll take a no, absolutely.
What were the times again?
6 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we have information on, I know Facebook, Christians helped get flyers out around town at appliance places and things like that.
I haven't seen anything about it.
It's on social media.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife reminded me today.
Oh, good. But we will continue to try to get the word out. I just wanted to acknowledge, I included in your weekly update just a little bit of acknowledgement on the recreational immunity and the latest recommendation from CIS, which, the latest recommendation from CIS that we are going to be talking with our attorneys about and just sort of talking internally. I just wanted to acknowledge that we know about it and are concerned about it, but are going to try to make sure we put together recommendations and actions that it makes sense and don't put us at risk, but also make sense for our community. So I'll just leave it there for now, just so I don't open ourselves up for anything. And then last but not least of my communication, I wanted Alyssa to take a moment. I've also mentioned in our weekly updates that we're working on some website upgrades. We're close. We're still not quite ready to roll it out, but we're far enough along that I wanted her to share with you kind of what it's looking like, and really excited. It's not done, but it's really cool.
Let me turn on my microphone here. So this is still in draft form and is definitely not finished, but we wanted to give you a preview. I'll scroll down here a little bit just so you can see the difference that the page has. We've got some quick links here. Oh, look, they came through and they updated this icon for me today. It was a couple credit cards because they thought we took court payments online, and so I didn't even know that was there yet. So as you scroll down the page, you'll see it's just a lot more user-friendly. We can update these banners over here as different things become the focus for the city, and then you'll see just nice little preview of our, this is pulled from our latest news page, and so it gives you a nice little preview of the latest things. And then down here it's pulling in our calendar of events. And then I think the main thing, I know Julia really wanted, she's very excited about this. These are the things that we get excited about. So we're doing this for all, right now we've got Budget Committee, Planning Commission, and Parks Board, and their pages look similar to what the council's pages look like, or page. We've condensed everything so that it's all just kind of a one-stop. So as you come to the council page now, you've got, if we drop this down, it's got all of your bios, if people want to learn about you, and then our meeting information and information on how to provide public hearing testimony or public comment. And then we've got all of our meetings here. And as, like after tonight, tomorrow I'll go in and actually, well, I was going to say I'll add the video, but the videos here, they're all linked because they're already created because they're a live stream. So the video link is there, and we've got a meeting packet, and then once the minutes are approved, which is what I'll do tomorrow, is I'll go in and I'll be uploading the minutes from the last meeting that were approved and be posting a link to them here. And so it's different. And then all the way down at the bottom, we've got our rules and council goals are down there. So we've done essentially that with all of the pages and for the different boards and committees, and so that it's just a lot easier to navigate when it's all on one chart here. So I think that's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Julia, just had listen, just had a question. On the homepage, I was curious about, are we using that like logo? Is that like a new logo, or are we going to use? Yeah.
This little Stayton, Oregon.
Yeah.
So that is something that Easy Task, who is our vendor that does our website, they made. They also made the previous one, which a lot of people grab and use as our logo.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's right.
So I wouldn't say it's like formally adopted, but
Yeah, because there is. You're right. It's not our official logo that's on the front
yeah,
of the, on the top.
we
of the
tend to use
homepage.
our city seal on everything. But it's funny when we get people doing bids or proposals for us. This is where they pull graphics from.
Gotcha.
So.
Cool.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Wirt.
this looks fantastic. Question for you, Alyssa. The
Yeah.
search function, does it search just our website?
Yes, we actually tested it. Julia tested it. And it does go to Google, but it's pulling from our website.
Okay, so not like that
It's
was a
better.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay. That was
it's
a
much better.
That was,
very difficult
That was
to
terrible.
search. And then as a user-friendly thing, I know that when I go to the website and I'm looking specifically to rent spaces, that was a really hard thing to find. Because no one thinks to look under Public Works.
So we've got it right here
Okay.
on resources,
Cool.
facility rentals. Tried to make it a little easier to find. And that's one thing this is why it hasn't went live yet, is we're really going through all the department's pages and trying to condense and figure out like what needs to be on the menu, and then what can just be on the department's homepage. An example of, I've been working with it's not planning department, it's community and economic development department, but I've been working on theirs the last week, and so you've got a much more condensed, if you guys remember the planning page before, it had about 12 different places that you could go. So now if you go here, you've got economic development, and then it drops down and there's some extra stuff in there. So it's driving people to the department's homepage, and then on the left there's going to be some more options instead of having them all on our menu, because it gets overwhelming.
And really trying to think about, what people are looking for and how hard it is, and, like permits, applications, we want to make sure are kind of up front. You're not having to dig and dive down into the innards of the department page. And the other thing that we want to ultimately do is have, with this more streamlined look, is having more project pages with information, so that people can go to different, planning projects, knowing more about what's happening today, or what's being able to find information easier for things that are relevant to them.
Yeah, and just really, I think the thing to remember is this is still, even when we do actually have it go live, it's a work in progress, and we'll still be working through the menus, and we go look at other cities just to see, you know, what their menus look like. We looked at some last week that we were like, oh, that's absolutely not what we want to do. It's way too overwhelming. And, oh, no, this is more kind of what we're looking at. And so it will probably continue to morph as time goes on.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any photo credits for those?
On
Those
oh,
pictures?
Well, I think I took this picture actually. Maybe it's myself or Richard Lewis.
Yes, that's why I was asking.
Yes.
Thank you very much
I think that there's a mixture in
for your
there. Yeah.
contribution, Richard. Those are awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Julia?
That's all I've got, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
No questions? Anybody have any discussion from council? Communication?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Giglio?
I just wanted to circle back around to the very, very beginning, just as we heard from David Welch. I just wanted to reiterate kind of what he was saying and just say that I really wanted to thank him for being here and just wanted to thank him for his service and thank just all of our veterans for their service. And just to reiterate kind of his points just alongside the Greenlight project, I do think it would be great to have some good communication through our city channels on some of the resources for vets in the community and just bringing more awareness to that. So I just wanted to just circle back around and just say that I concur and I would like to see that.
And I will say, I think Christian is already on it. I know a post went up today, and I believe it had some links to some services already, and I think the plan is to kind of have some of that throughout the week.
Fantastic.
Awesome. No, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor?
Councilor Orr.
I didn't write down the gentleman's name that did the public comment.
Mr. Thomas.
Merle
Mhm.
Thomas. So he was requesting a time change to his business hours. Is that anything you guys want to? Was that like when we decided to allow dispensaries? That was something we as a council put into code?
That's my assumption, is that in allowing them, you had certain regulations on time, place, and manner, and that the council at the time, I assume with community
I
input,
don't think that was us.
decided on those hours of limitation. Hours.
How long can you buy alcohol? Is it open till 7?
It's got to be longer than that. I mean, we got a number of
Oh, no, like liquor stores. I'm just
liquor
curious.
stores.
Liquor
I
store.
think it's 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. You can't buy it. Is that what
No,
you're
I'm
asking?
talking about
I
like
think
a
there's
liquor
something
store.
local.
Oh,
Councilor McDonald believes it's 8.
8.
8 p.m. is how late Stayton liquor stores open. 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's one in Salem that's open till 10 p.m.
I think that one's downtown.
But I don't know if that's because of our local restrictions or if that's just the hours that they.
I don't know on the liquor, but I know on dispensaries that it was set in the time, manner, place.
Councilor Orr, are you asking to look at that, revisit it?
I will want to know if anyone is interested in reviewing that.
Yes, I would be. I think I don't think I was around when we made that decision, so I'd be interested in looking at
I
that
feel like that
reasoning
was
and-
before all of our time,
Yeah.
except
could
the
be.
mayor's.
I think that was so new. My recollection was it was so new and so fluid. We were grappling with it at the time, and that's probably how the hours were established.
sure. I don't see any reason why not to reinvestigate it.
I mean, that seems like that's where we're going. I probably would still be against it, but I think it's good for us to have a conversation.
So I guess I would like input on what that looks like to reinvestigate it. Do you want, I mean, I would assume I would assign it to planning, since that's probably who, it's within the planning code, I believe. But are you wanting just to go to planning commission? Are you wanting to have public outreach? Are you wanting to look at, I guess, what would you need in order to make a determination on whether or not the hours?
Is it established code?
It is established code.
So whatever it takes to revise
I
the
would say
code.
send it back to planning commission
Just to
with
look-
the request.
Okay, so just to look, not necessarily to
Because the has to go through public comment twice, right? It has to go through planning commission and then here.
So, what's that? Oh,
No?
so you're wanting to send it back to planning commission to extend the hours of, I guess I'm not sure what the.
I think they're
process is.
asking if we can look at it currently to see if we can accommodate the gentleman's request. Is that what you guys are thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I would just be curious and interested in the original reasoning, if that's
Okay.
on paper somewhere. And if not, then just have it up for discussion again. I don't see a reason why it should be treated any different than any other business, especially
Okay.
a liquor store, so.
Okay.
So we'll do some research and come back with some more information and then talk about it further. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I would also, I would really like to prioritize what the public comment was at the time, and also I think engaging. I mean, if this does come before council, I think engaging it with the public and hearing their feedback. I do think it is a, I think it's a matter of like public interest quite a bit, and so I don't think it's, So.
Okay, so you bring that back. Thank you. Anything else? I just have one thing that, Councilor Sims, got anything?
I just had one last thing to talk about for the veterans discussion. I'm a 30-year veteran, retiree, but if there is anybody that needs help with finding resources, I'm a member of the VFW, I'm a member of the American Legion. Contact me, send me an email, and I'll find you help.
Yep, thank you for that. The last thing I have for you is I was approached months ago, probably 3 months ago at least, maybe 4, by a gentleman who has a lobbying organization for small towns. He approached Sublimity, Almsville, I believe he does Brownsville, of that nature. Just asking you all if you have any interest in that from our standpoint of Stayton's participation in it, and obviously that would come with a presentation from this gentleman. I just told him I would roll it out to you guys and see what you thought, and if you have any interest that I can share with you what I have, I'll send you an email with what I have. That's really the extent of it, and then you guys can give me feedback. That's really all it is.
Is that for like state level or federal level?
Yeah,
more
so
like
he lobbies on behalf of small communities like Stayton at the state level.
state level.
Yeah, and you can see what his position is right now about what benefits would derive from that, and I'll send that to you in an email.
Yeah, Julia, do we currently have someone at the state level lobbying?
We do not have anybody at the state level lobbying.
Then I'd be very interested. Yeah, for sure.
And then Mayor, I guess I would just recommend that you send it to me and I'll send
will.
it out to council.
Yep, I will. It's just a contact information. There's really not, but I will. Yeah, I'll do that. That's all I got. Thanks for your commitment tonight and your participation. With that, the meeting is adjourned.